everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm very happy to have you here, guys. As you can see in today's video, I want to share my thoughts on two fragrances, both by Fragrance World, or actually French Avenue, and I'm guessing that's a sub-brand to Fragrance World. And the two fragrances are Royal Blend. This is an inspiration of Angel's Share from Killian, and Royal Blend Nero. This is an inspiration of a fragrance from... I will add a fragrance here on the screen because I cannot remember the name of the fragrance out of my mind. I received these two fragrances from the Dubai collection. They reached out and they asked me if I would like to test these fragrances. I said yes, so they sent them to me. Now, this is not the first time or the second time that I'm smelling the fragrances. But it's neither like an in-depth review where I have worn the fragrance for maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months, you know. So it's like a first impressions mixed with a review, that kind of video. So yes, without further ado, let's just start. Now, of course, you guys, if you have tried any of these two fragrances, I would love to hear your feedback on the fragrances. Let me know if you find them similar to the OG fragrances that they are supposed to be inspired by. Let me know if you enjoy them. Let me know how you find them compared to other fragrances inspired by Angel's Share or by the other fragrance. It's a fragrance from... Even though I don't want to make this video very long, but I have to mention the beautiful presentation that both of these fragrances have. Safe to say it's at least extravagant, you guys. Like, the box is huge. Like, when it comes to the presentation, they really didn't disappoint. I will add a close-up with the presentation right about now so you can see how the fragrances come packaged. When you purchase something like this, even though it's not an expensive fragrance, I feel like it's under 35 euros, at max 40 euros, something like this. But the presentation really makes you think that you purchase something that costs much more than its actual price. You know, it really gives you like a luxurious, like luxury-like experience to unbox it, you know, to take the bottle out of the packaging, you know, to look at the card with the notes and everything. Like, I feel like they really thought through these kind of details. Now, let's start with Royal Blend, because this is actually the fragrance that I have worn as well, so I can give you a bit more of feedback on how it performs and what I feel about this fragrance. This, I've only tried it a few times on my skin, but like I've mentioned, let's start with Royal Blend. Here are the notes, you guys. By the way, if you see this, I have a little bit of blush left here. Yeah, I forgot to... whatever. Okay, so let's see how this fragrance smells like. Right from the start, yes, it goes into the exact same direction as Angel's Share from Killian. And I find it very similar to other fragrances that are inspired by Angel's Share from Killian. I find it leans in a very similar direction to Sublime Comedy from Twins Paris. I find it leans in a very similar direction to... there was a fragrance, Fire Your Desire. Fire Your Desire? Yes, I think Fire Your Desire from Paris Corner. Yeah, I will add the fragrance here on the screen as a reference. It goes into a similar direction. However, I feel like this is actually stronger. Now, it's interesting because I feel like on the Dubai Collections website, they said this is an extrait de parfum. But looking at the fragrance concentration, this is like 20% fragrance oil. I don't know. You know how this opens up with? It opens up with something like the overall fragrance feels very cold. Almost a tad icy cold, but not as icy cold as Sublime Comedy from Twins Paris. You get whiffs of a cold apple pie. This is the vibe it gives me. It's not really iced like you just took it out from the freezer, but it's a very cold apple pie, like you took it out from the fridge perhaps, you know, like you let it sit for a bit, then you go close to it and you get whiffs of that apple pie like smell. Yes, you get them here as well, but cold with a very interesting, almost like... it's a woody accord for sure, but let me explain you how the woody accord smells like to me. So, it's not a dark, deep, rich, robust of a woody accord. To me, first of all, it feels very dry. A little bit molecular in a sense. It has almost this like synthetic molecular quality about it. And it feels very bright and airy at the same time. Now, this is the woody accord, and to me, this is pretty much how the fragrance smells like. You have this beautiful mix between something that feels very cold, almost a little bit of something iced, with that beautiful apple pie like whiffs, you know, like, it's not apple juice, I don't detect your apple juice, to me it's like apple pie. But again, not a warm apple pie, more of a cold apple pie, and you get whiffs of it, you know, you smell the apple, you smell that doughy like thing, facet, with that very interesting dry, bright, airy, molecular, woodsy kind of accord, a little bit of something powdery there, a little bit of something musky there, but the overall fragrance, it feels in a sense very airy and breezy, not airy in an ozonic way, but in a sense that it feels breezy. It doesn't feel like a very robust and decadent kind of fragrance, like a very complex and multifaceted and layered fragrance. To me, it has all these notes are covered in something that feels molecular and breezy. This is the kind of vibe, let's just say, this fragrance gives me. I have to say, it smells very beautiful. Like, yeah, I love the DNA, you guys. I really enjoy how this DNA smells like. Yeah, safe to say, to me, this is a more of a linear fragrance. What I've noticed that it happens, let's just say, as it develops, that ice, the slight icy cold feeling tones down a little bit, but the fragrance doesn't go much warmer. I feel like it still stays in the cold territory in a sense, but that very molecular woodsy facet actually goes a little bit stronger, so now it's a bit more, it has a bit more of an oomph to it, it's a bit more present with that apple pie like whiffs in the background. And then in the dry down, what happens again, it goes back to molecular. So it starts molecular and airy and breezy and very cold. It goes to a bit of a more robust, of a woody accord, let's just say, but still dry, still bright and airy. Is just a little bit more emphasized, let's just say, with that apple pie like facet. And then in the dry down, same scent direction, same DNA, same notes that shine, but now the overall scent composition goes very molecular and airy, and in a sense, from feeling very dry texture-wise and cold, in the dry down I feel like it feels like very round around the edges. I don't know how to describe this scent. Yeah, and something, a little bit something spicy here and there, you know. Yeah, something cinnamon-like, but it's not very pronounced in a sense. It doesn't smell like cinnamon sticks or like dusty from that spicy accord. To me, it just adds a little bit of diversity to the scent composition, but it's just a slight facet, you know, you don't pick it up that much, or at least I don't pick it up that much. So I hope the sound is better now, because I just realized I forgot to turn on the mic. Yeah, doesn't smell like alcohol, doesn't smell like booze to me. Even though maybe that cold facet that you have could be somewhat related to a glass of whiskey or cognac with a little bit of ice, but again, when I'm smelling the fragrance, I described you how it smells like to me, you know, like what kind of memories or like what kind of feelings it evokes in me, and it doesn't make me think of anything boozy, even though the glass, like the bottle, looks like very high quality, like a cognac glass or like a whiskey glass, and the bottle feels very heavy. Yeah, I really enjoy how this fragrance smells like. To me, compared to Khamrah, it's very different. Like, I get the similarities, which is the apple-like facet in both of these fragrances with the cinnamon, but then the main differences that I detect, this is much more molecular and breezy and dry, and in a sense, it has a slight transparency to it. Whereas this one is much more opaque, it's much richer, rounder, fuller, denser, thicker, more robust, more resinous leaning. It's much more dense overall. This doesn't have that translucency or like transparency facet that I detect in this fragrance. Yeah, the only similarities that I pick between the two, that apple pie like facet, but in Khamrah to me it actually smells like apple juice. So yeah, that apple with a slight spicy cinnamony feel. Yeah, besides this goes much colder. Khamrah is actually much more of a warmer scent profile overall. Yeah, they do share similarities, but they share their differences, like many differences, especially when you smell them side by side, like you will notice the differences for sure. Now, this one actually makes me think a little bit of Amberythme from Afnan. But again, that apple-like facet that's done in a very molecular and minimalistic way. This is the cord, let's just say, that ties these two fragrances together. But then in Amberythme, you actually have something from Instant Crush, that translucent, ambery, vanillic-like facet, you know. So that fragrance from Afnan, Amberythme, is like a fusion, whereas this fragrance, to me, it shares a similar core, but then it's done in a different style, let's just say, you know. Yeah, this is how this smells like. Look, to me, this smells modern. Even though when you think of the smell of apple pie, it's not really like modern, but to me the way it's done here in a very molecular and breezy way, and in a very minimalistic way at the same time. This doesn't have a lot of things, I mean this fragrance doesn't have a lot of things going on, like different facets and accords and nuances, and it doesn't go through a crazy development like other fragrances. This, to me, even though I do pick up certain differences for sure as the fragrance develops, but I have to say it's a more of a linear direction, you know. It's nothing, like I've mentioned, like it starts out in one way, it ends up in a completely different way. But I actually appreciate the fact that this is more of a linear fragrance, because I really enjoy what they created here. I think definitely smells much more expensive than it's priced. Even that in certain fragrances where you have a very pronounced, like dry, bright, woody accord, in some fragrances it can come off, or it can come across as a little bit sharp and a little bit harsh, but to me here I do not detect this aspect at all. Yeah, to me this feels very well blended and round and smooth, dry, yes, dry, woody, bright, molecular accord, yes, apple pie, yes, cold, like icy cold, yes, spicy, yes, but nothing harsh about it. Yeah, beautiful interpretation, and interesting. Even as I'm smelling this fragrance now, it just goes more molecular and not brighter, because it doesn't go, when I mean bright, I mean light, actually, like weight-wise, like density-wise. It just goes more like, in a sense, more molecular and more light weight-wise, if you know what I mean. Yeah, let me quickly touch on the performance on this fragrance. Now look, of course, I've only tested it on myself, so I cannot comment how further it projects or anything like this. But from wearing it, I don't feel like this is the kind of fragrance that projects like crazy. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Anyways, I will update you on these fragrances, let's just in like a month and a half, a little bit, as I got more time to wear them in different scenarios, you know. Maybe I will test them on my partner, let's see. So those were my thoughts about Royal Blend. Now let's move on to Royal Blend Nero. And again, this is their take on the DNA of a fragrance. I will add the fragrance here on the screen. I haven't tried that fragrance, so I cannot comment on the similarities. But what I can tell you is that the first time I smelled this fragrance, it reminded me of Khamrah. Of course, with their differences, like when I smell them side by side, it's not like they have put the actual fragrance of this one in this one, you know. Definitely not the case. But they do have a very similar DNA. And I find it much more close to Khamrah than to Royal Blend, the simple one. So let me just spray this fragrance as well. They do share similarities, but this goes, like, texture-wise, this fragrance is very different. Also, it's more complex. Now, this opens up with something that's in my nose. Again, smells like McDonald's apple juice, like a warm glass of McDonald's apple juice with few cinnamon sticks. But what I notice here, it feels much richer, much denser, very warm and very rich and full body. This fragrance feels very layered and multifaceted. And I get something slightly citrusy-like, slightly sparkling. That's one kind of green accord that I detect. And I also detect a green accord that feels slightly almost not really minty, but quite aromatic in a sense, but it's behind that apple juice facet. The citrusy kick is much more pronounced here. Think something like a very gentle citrusy accord, nothing overly astringent or refreshing or anything too citrusy, you know. Even for me, as I do not really enjoy citruses on myself, I could still wear this fragrance. I don't have any issues with the way the citrus accord is done. It's just, it's noticeable enough to mention it. And also, I'm not really sure what's that green, like the slightly minty green aromatic facet that I detect, but this facet actually will stay throughout the whole development of the fragrance. So not only I get it in the opening, but I get it in the heart, I get it in the dry down as well. Yes, something, I don't know why it makes me think of cardamom. Something like cardamom, but not like dusty, freshly ground, not a dusty, powdery cardamom that's a little bit sweet, neither freshly grounded cardamom, but something like cardamom and mint, you know. That's the kind of combo I get. Something that's gently spiced, but slightly minty at the same time, you know. And again, keep in mind it sits behind that really rich and dense apple-like facet. Look, to me this fragrance is very well done. Like, in a sense, doesn't feel flat at all. And the notes, in a sense, they create a very rich and multifaceted texture of the fragrance. And I feel like this aspect, the fact that the notes are done in such a way so the fragrance feels very rich and dense and robust, and it doesn't feel flat with all these different facets, I think this is what it makes it smell, again, much more expensive than its price. And the scent structure doesn't collapse as the fragrance starts to develop, because when it comes to more affordable fragrances, maybe the opening is like, wow, you know, like sweeps you off your feet or something like this, and let's just say like 1 hour in, you smell the fragrance again and the fragrance feels quite flat. And this fragrance actually goes through a beautiful development as it stays on your skin. So what I've noticed that it happens. Remember how I said that in the opening, what I detect the most out of all the notes is that apple juice facet with the cinnamon. However, it doesn't feel aquatic. It felt very rich and dense and warm and thick and multifaceted, you know. Now, as the fragrance slowly but surely starts to develop on the skin, what I notice happening is I start to detect almost this thick, resinous, caramel, vanillic-like texture to the fragrance. The texture of the fragrance does feel resinous in the sense that it feels very warm and very dense, but the scent, or like the actual scent doesn't smell resinous per se. It smells more caramelly, vanillic. So even though it does have maybe an ambery accord, maybe something resinous, but it doesn't dominate scent-wise to me. If anything, benzoin, something like this. If you have ever smelled benzoin in real life or even in fragrances, you know that the scent of benzoin, I feel like it's one of the most easy to enjoy resinous facets in fragrances, this to begin with, because it just feels very rich and dense and warm and full at the same time, with a caramelly, vanillic-like sweetness. That's benzoin to me. I detect something very similar here. That's the kind of amber accord I'm talking about. But this amber accord overall gives a lot of support to the other notes. So the fragrance, again, doesn't feel flat and thin. It feels very multifaceted and dense and layered. Now, as the fragrance develops, like I've mentioned, slowly but surely, maybe let's just say 20 minutes in, that apple juice facet that you had in the opening starts to move more and more in the background until you lose it completely. I do still detect that powdery cinnamony facet. Again, the citrus nuance that I told you in the opening that was slightly sparkling in a sense, faded away completely. However, I do still detect that aromatic facet, and again, I don't know where it's coming from. I'm telling you, it smells something like mints with cardamom, like slightly minty and slightly spicy at the same time. Again, I'm not really sure. And green, keep in mind green, but a delicate kind of green accord, nothing overpowering. Like I've mentioned, this stays throughout the whole development, and in the heart, to me, what I detect the most, it's almost like a date accord, you know, like sticky, warm, rich caramel with dates on that rich ambery accord, with a beautiful dry woody facet in the background. But the dry woody facet is different than the kind of woody facet or like woody accord that you have here. The woody accord that you have here feels much more minimalistic and modern and how to say, like molecular in a sense, whereas the woody accord feels actually a tad more richer but very dry. And again, it sits deep in the background behind that date-like accord and behind that beautiful ambery-like facet. So in the opening, it was the apple juice. In the heart, it's the dates that shine the most. And the dates, to me, they feel very round and creamy in a sense, but very sweet and dense. I can't say that it feels like sticky sweet because I don't get the stickiness of the date accord, but it definitely feels very sweet. And then in the dry down from the whole scent mix that I've described you, to me, you lose the date accord, and now it's the moment where that ambery-like accord with the caramel-like facets, with the vanillic hints, shines the most, with the dry woody nuance in the background, and again with that green, slightly aromatic facet. This is how the fragrance smells like to me. It's much more layered, it's much more complex. You have here different types of sweet accords that each adds its own twist with different kind of spices. You have here something that smells like sweet spicy, think cinnamon. You have here something that smells like green, minty and spicy at the same time. Can't tell you what that is, but I do pick it up. You have the sweetness from a date accord. You have the sweetness from like an ambery accord with a caramel vanillic-like facet. You have the sweetness in the opening from the apple juice. You have here different types of sweet accord. Now, are these two fragrances similar? They are and they aren't. They are different enough to be judged as different fragrances for sure. They do share a similar facet, which is the apple accord, but then everything about them is different. The apple accord here is in a different mix and different note shine. The apple accord here is in a different mix and different note shine, and also the texture of these two fragrances is very different. The texture of this fragrance feels very resinous and warm and rich and dense and thick and very layered and multifaceted and complex and heavy. This doesn't have anything molecular or airy about it, you know. This is like your typical heavy, robust, strong, dense, rich fragrance, whereas the texture of this fragrance definitely leans more molecular, more breezy, more, you know, it has a very interesting effect. It gives a very interesting effect, and in a sense this has a slight transparency throughout it, even though this is not your typical light and bubbly and breezy and airy and that kind of fragrance, you know. Even though this does have, let's just say, some heavier notes, some heavier accords, like the way they're blended and the kind of heavier accords this one has make it feel much more molecular and airy and bright, whereas this feels like very robust, you know, and dense, and this is fully opaque, no transparent or translucent facets throughout it. So this is what I wanted to say about these two fragrances. Now I have to say which one I prefer between the two. You guys, at the moment I feel like I'm more drawn to this one because I do not have something like this in my collection. There's like a straight on dupe. I mean, look, straight on. I do not have Angel's Share in my collection to compare it, you know, so I cannot say if it's that similar to it or not, but it definitely goes in that direction, and I really enjoy what they created here. So yeah, again, at the moment I feel like I reach towards this fragrance much more than I reach for this one. Now look, this one, if you enjoy the DNA of Khamrah, again, I cannot comment on the similarities with that fragrance, oh my god, with this fragrance on the screen, because I have not smelled that fragrance, so I cannot tell you if they're similar, what are the differences or anything, but I can tell you this: if you enjoy how this one smells like, and you are looking for something a little bit more complex, a little bit denser, a little bit fuller, but with a very similar scent profile, try this fragrance. I don't think you will be disappointed. Now keep in mind, Nero, I wouldn't call this fragrance Nero or Noir or dark or anything like this. Neither the other one. These are not your typical like earthy, deep, mysterious kind of fragrances. To me, this fragrance, hold on, because I grabbed the fragrance, is so weird today. To me, this fragrance gives me modern, chic statement, minimalistic sort of vibes, very, very trendy, very extrovert in a way, but it has something very modern, definitely modern about it. The other one, to me, when I smell it, leans more Middle Eastern in the sense that you have the spices with the date core, with anything like this, and it leans more gourmand style in a way. But keep in mind that green accord in the background. But you guys, what they create, this doesn't smell like a €35 fragrance or €40 fragrance. Wow. And this feels extremely smooth. You know how with certain fragrances you need to give them time, or you need to let them sit for a little bit, or you just need to wait 10 minutes so the opening fades away. With these fragrances I haven't noticed this aspect. This is everything I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you to the team from the Dubai collection for sending me these two fragrances. Like I've mentioned, these were sent to me. However, the videos are not sponsored, you guys, and even if they would be sponsored, this will never change my opinion on the fragrance and my experience with the fragrance. So yes, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget you can follow me on Instagram. Here is my handle. I will see you in my next video, but until then, thank you so much for watching, and I want to wish you an amazing day wherever you are. Bye guys.